It had been raining all evening, the kind of persistent drizzle that turns the asphalt into a mirror and the air into something sharp and cold, cutting at the back of your neck no matter how high you rolled the collar of your jacket. I was alone on a stretch of road just outside town, the streetlights sparse and weak, pools of water reflecting their pale halos across the cracked surface. The engine hummed a low, familiar tune beneath me, and the tires whispered across wet asphalt, wet enough that each small bump sent a ripple through the wheel. I stopped briefly at a bend, the car idling, and glanced down at the puddle collecting near the edge of the guardrail. My reflection shimmered in the rainwater, distorted and black-edged by oil and the uneven ripples of the puddle. For a moment, I studied it casually. The curve of the hood, the faint glow of the dashboard, the headlights faintly illuminating the slick surface of the road. Then the movement caught me off guard. My car, my reflection, moved, slowly at first, creeping forward as though it were still on the asphalt, yet I hadn't touched the accelerator, hadn't even put my foot on the brake in a way that would explain it. I froze, hands clutching the steering wheel, eyes narrowing. The reflection glided forward, tires spinning faintly in the mirror, but outside the puddle, my car remained inert, parked, idling silently. A shiver ran down my spine. I reached for the door handle, half expecting someone, or something, to be there, but the car remained empty. Rain tapped against the roof in a delicate, erratic rhythm, a staccato accompaniment to the low hum of the engine. I leaned closer to the puddle, studying the movement. It mirrored the exact shape of my car, every detail precise, but the subtle sway of the body, the slight tilt of the wheels, it was alive in a way mine wasn't. I shook my head, trying to laugh off the sensation. Wet asphalt plays tricks on the eyes, I told myself. I was tired. I had been driving too long, the cold seeping into my bones. But the reflection continued, inching forward, leaving a ripple across the puddle as if the water itself were awake. I could see the headlights flicker in the mirrored world, sweeping across the puddle's edge like searching eyes. I swallowed and put the car in gear, planning to move forward, to shake the thought from my mind. But when I glanced down, the puddle had multiplied in my view. Other puddles, smaller, scattered along the roadside, each showing the car, always moving without me. I twisted in my seat. The road stretched forward, empty, nothing following, nothing else in sight. The reflection was all there was, my car driving alone, independent, aware. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the cold engine hum, the wet tires whispering against the slick asphalt. But the puddle didn't relent. With each blink, I noticed slight differences. The reflection sometimes lingered, headlights scanning places I hadn't looked. At other times, the puddle's car would veer slightly, tires tracing an impossible curve, leaving no mark on the asphalt. I reached for the door lock reflexively, the cold seeping into my fingertips, and the reflection seemed to notice. Its headlights flicked toward me, aligning precisely with my eyes in the mirror. Panic began to creep in, subtle at first, like a shadow growing in the corner of a room. I pulled the car forward, cautiously, tires hissing over the wet pavement, trying to force the reflection to keep pace. It did not. In fact, the puddle car seemed to anticipate every movement, drifting ahead, then halting suddenly as though testing me, testing the rules of our shared reality. The radio hissed once, low and static-filled, then went dead. I stared through the windshield, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the world seemed heavier, somehow denser, as if the road itself had thickened. Each time I glanced at the puddle, my reflected car had shifted slightly, always just beyond a normal margin of delay. It was obeying some rhythm I could not grasp, yet it knew me. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. Perhaps it was exhaustion, perhaps some trick of light on wet asphalt. I rolled down the window, the chill rushing in, tasting like iron and cold stone, and leaned closer to the puddle, half expecting to see something other than a car. But there it was, tires turning, hood shining, engine idling in motion that defied explanation. I pressed the accelerator lightly, heart pounding, trying to intersect with the reflection, to synchronize our movements. The puddle responded instantly, moving in a way that felt deliberate. Not random, not a copy, but a choice. I could feel it watching me from that shallow mirror, studying my posture, the way I gripped the wheel, even the subtle tremor in my hands. I recoiled and pressed the brakes, and the puddle car braked too, mimicking me, or perhaps mocking me, I couldn't tell. I tried a turn, slow, cautious, and the puddle car veered with an eerie smoothness, keeping the same angle, the same pace, as though our fates were bound by some invisible thread. I realized with a mounting dread that the reflection was not bound by my reality. Could do what it wanted, yet it waited for me to notice, to respond. There was patience there, deliberate and unyielding. The forest on either side of the road seemed darker now, wet leaves hanging like black curtains, branches dripping with condensation. Each time the puddle reflected a bend or a tree, it was slightly distorted, taller, more twisted, leaning in ways the real world did not. Time began to feel wrong. My dashboard clock flickered intermittently, the seconds stretching and contracting. The puddle remained constant, a taut, unblinking eye, observing the passage of time differently, following its own internal rhythm. I tried to step out, to walk around the car, but the moment my shoes touched the wet ground, the puddle rippled violently, as if aware of my intentions. The reflection accelerated slightly, and for the briefest instant, I felt that I could see through the puddle, into some other space where the car existed without me, moving along a road that twisted impossibly, bending light and shadow in ways I could not comprehend. I returned to the driver's seat, my hands cold and trembling on the wheel. My breathing rose in short, uneven bursts, mist forming in the cabin, hanging in ghostly waves above the dashboard. I tried to look away, but the puddle called me back. I realized I could not escape its gaze. The reflection was a doppelganger, a surrogate, yet it was more, aware, patient, and waiting. Minutes or hours passed. I lost track of how long I had been trapped in this slow, quiet torment. Every glance revealed more movement, more subtle changes in the puddle's car. Slight tilts, tire tracks that didn't exist on the asphalt, headlights scanning the forest edge. Sometimes I caught the shadow of something else within the reflection. Not my car, but something faint, dark, stretching at the edges of the puddle's light. I would blink and it would vanish. Eventually, exhaustion pressed against me, heavy and unrelenting. My eyelids drooped, and when I opened them again, the puddle car was gone. I exhaled shakily, relieved, imagining it had been a hallucination, a trick of tired eyes and wet asphalt. I started the car, moving slowly forward, but the world seemed off. Every puddle along the roadside now rippled gently, though the rain had stopped, as if something beneath the surface had just noticed I was awake. I glanced once more at a wide puddle reflecting the curve ahead. My car was there, yes, but the headlights were turned toward me. The hood tilted in a way mine had never tilted, and the engine hummed a low, patient note, waiting. Waiting for the moment I would flick the turn signal or shift the wheel or breathe. Waiting for the moment to continue the road without me. I didn't stop driving, but I didn't escape either. I can still see it, sometimes, when rain gathers in shallow pools, moving without me, watching, waiting. The road was empty. Not a single headlight pierced the dark horizon. Nothing but the faint, diffused glow of the moon caught between clouds. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, noticing how the dashboard lights seemed dimmer than usual, casting my hands in long, wavering shadows. The engine purred steadily, a comforting monotone, until I felt the first tug, a slight pressure on the car, subtle, almost polite, against the driver's side door. First, I blamed the wind. It had been storming earlier, though now it was more a distant hiss than a gale. But the pressure grew, insistent, uneven, like a tide pressing on the car from every angle. My side mirror rattled, loose, or maybe just the wind teasing it. A low moan rose through the trees lining the road, though the leaves barely moved. I paused, foot hovering over the accelerator, and listened. The sound wasn't outside. It was inside, vibrating through the metal frame, the glass, the steering column itself. I pressed the accelerator lightly, trying to drive forward, but the wind resisted, tugging with strange precision. From the front, the hood strained against me, the metallic groan synchronized with the gusts from the rear. From my left, the air pushed hard against the window, as if the road itself had contracted inwards. From my right, a sudden lull allowed a faint whisper to rise above the hum, like a voice speaking from far, far away, and yet only for me. I tried to rationalize it. I'd been driving all day, fatigue a stubborn companion. The mountains were notorious for microclimates, sudden gusts that would appear without warning. But these gusts weren't sudden. They were deliberate, coordinated. They pulled, pressed, swirled, sometimes canceling each other, sometimes amplifying, as if they were aware of the car, aware of me. The windows rattled, small tremors running through the glass, and I felt it then, a subtle, conscious testing. The steering wheel shifted in my hands even when I gripped it tightly. The tires whispered over the slick asphalt, hesitant, as though unsure whether to hold or slide. Shadows from the guardrail stretched unnaturally across the hood, elongating and compressing with each pulse of air. I blinked, thinking I saw the reflection of a figure crouched on the roof, only to find the rooftop empty when I glanced up. I turned the dial on the radio, seeking static, anything to distract myself, and the hiss came alive. The white noise seemed to warp, swelling and contracting, forming patterns that echoed the wind's rhythm. A long, drawn-out tone would rise from the left speaker as the gust pressed against the left door. It would fall from the right as the pressure shifted. I laughed nervously, and the laugh was carried backward by the wind, returning faintly, slower, distorted. It was not my voice. Could not be. The road twisted, faintly familiar yet strangely wrong. Every bend seemed to curve inward as I approached, the trees pressing closer with each rotation. The wind did not move past them. It moved through them, coiling between trunks and branches like a living thing, brushing the roof and hood with conscious patience. I could feel it watching, testing limits. I tried to steer gently, subtly correcting, and the gusts responded, matching my movements but always slightly off. A calculated mimicry, never perfect, always deliberate. The dashboard lights flickered, reflecting off droplets clinging to the windshield. I could see them pulse in tandem with the pressure, tiny red and amber points trembling like distant eyes. The rearview mirror caught shadows moving faster than they should, bending reality into thin slivers. A flash of motion caught my peripheral vision. A branch striking the side window, or a hand. I jerked my head, but nothing was there. Just the wind, pressing, nudging, waiting. Minutes became elastic. I couldn't tell if I had been driving for 10 or 30, or even 60. Every push of air seemed to stretch time, elongating moments, compressing space. The tires whispered against the slick asphalt with an uneven cadence, matching pulses in the dashboard lights and gusts of wind that seemed to come from directions that didn't exist. I could feel the air slip under the car, lifting slightly, then pushing down harder as if weighing me. I considered stopping, shutting off the engine, but the wind would not allow it. Stopping was an invitation. Movement was a test. A low vibration ran through the frame. I placed my hands flat on the hood. The metal hummed beneath my palms, responding to the invisible fingers of the air. The trees groaned, the leaves barely stirring, and I realized with a slow, creeping dread that the forest itself might be a conduit for the wind's intention. Not gusts, not a storm, not an accident. Something sentient, pressing, calculating. I imagined the wind curling around the car like smoke, slipping under the doors, threading through the cabin vents. I tried speaking aloud. "What do you want?" My voice was swallowed immediately, not by distance, but by pressure. The air around the car tightened, a suffocating embrace, responding not with words, but with a subtle, anticipatory push. Each muscle in my body tensed as the wind shifted, coaxing the car slightly sideways, then forward, then back. Steering felt wrong, yet resisting felt impossible. The sensation was delicate, precise, like being held by a force infinitely patient and slightly amused. The headlights caught glimpses of the roadside in fractured angles. guardrails that were closer than they should have been, boulders twisted into impossible shapes, shadows pooling where there should have been none. I imagined that if I leaned forward, I could see a figure guiding the gusts, orchestrating the pressure with long, silent motions. But each time I searched, nothing was there. Only the wind and the knowledge that it was aware and waiting. I considered stopping again, imagining what might happen if I put the car in park. The thought was unbearable. The air would push back harder, a sentient correction. My heartbeat echoed through the cabin, and I realized it too was being measured. The wind didn't just move me. It anticipated me, mirrored me, calculated every tremor, every twitch, every instinct. I could feel it watching the tension in my hands, the rise and fall of my chest, the slight tremor in my jaw. Time folded further. A bend appeared in the road I had passed moments before, identical in every detail. The trees, the slick asphalt, the shallow puddle near the guardrail. It repeated exactly. My reflection in the rear view shimmered unnaturally, showing a face that blinked too slowly, a face I did not fully recognize. I tried looking away, but the wind caught my attention with a sudden pulse, pressing hard against the driver's door, whispering in the hollow spaces between metal and glass. I drove on, exhausted, the pressure relentless. My mind began to splinter in quiet ways. Was this the wind? Was it me? Was the car testing me? Or the world outside testing me through the car? Each bend, each shadow, each creak and moan seemed to answer, yet gave nothing concrete. Reality had become pliable, measured by the force pressing against my chest, steering the wheel just enough to remind me I was not in control. A flash of movement in the windshield, a tree branch, another driver, something else. And the wind shifted violently, spinning the car slightly, then releasing with perfect timing, as if to say, not yet, wait. The road stretched on, twisting endlessly, folding over itself, and I realized with a cold certainty that this would not end. The wind would not relent. It had no intention of letting me understand, no desire to let me stop. It existed to measure, to press, to mirror, to wait. I do not remember exactly when I stopped paying attention to the seconds. I do not remember when I realized I was no longer moving, though the tires whispered and the engine hummed. The air pressed from all directions at once, constant, patient, and observant. I only remember the shadows, stretching long across the hood, bending impossibly. I remember the tires, whispering against slick asphalt that may or may not exist. And I remember the dashboard lights, pulsing with the rhythm of something alive and deliberate. The wind waits, still pressing. I do not know if I will ever leave.